Welcome to this resilientetech.io video on the Retevis RT10 two-way radio. So if you're familiar with two-way radios, you probably know about these. Even if you're not, you probably know about these kind of GMRS, FRS two-way radios, these little cheap radios. And they have some good features about them. You can we'll just turn one on here, and it's the little chirp sound that is so familiar. And these are kind of like very short range way of communicating between two people with voice, and they have plenty of kind of useful functions. But I'm going to talk about this as an alternative, the RT10, and there's three ways or three reasons I think this is a much better option. But before we get to those three reasons, I want to talk a little bit about why we might want a personal two-way radio anyway, when we have these. You know, we've all got cell phones, or most of us have cell phones now, and most kind of person-to-person communications are now done on this cell phone. So WhatsApp, Signal, text messaging, whatever it is super easy just to send a quick message to somebody and they send one back. So why do we even need something like this as well? Well, I think that in reality the cell phone has replaced a lot of applications of two-way radios and nice things. You know, with the internet you can send a message to somebody anywhere around the world, not just within a couple of miles radius. But there are some instances where I think a two-way radio is really a lot better than a phone. The first is, I mean, there's several reasons, but I think the first is if you want to be in a situation where you need to make quick communications in a kind of practical setting where it's going to be like too clunky to have to get your phone out and open an app and type something in. So one example is if you're in a convoy of cars, you know, a couple of cars driving together, you want to communicate between the cars, you can just lift up a two-way radio and talk in it. But, you know, you can't get a phone out. You know, it's difficult to get a phone out. You definitely should not do that when you're driving. Another application is if you're in an event or business situation or another kind of situation where you have a bunch of people want to communicate, say in a couple of buildings, and just have quick, easy communication, particularly when there might not be good cell phone coverage within those buildings. One example of this is a cruise ship. So you've got a bunch of metal around you, and you might not be getting good cell phone coverage on a cruise ship. A third application is when you're somewhere where you really don't want to have this tracking device with you for whatever reason, right? So the cell phones, we all know, are tracking devices, the GPS built in, the triangulation from cell phone towers can track you wherever you go. You might just not want that for whatever you're doing, and you want to be able to communicate with a bunch of people without this. Or you might just be in a place where the cell phone coverage is still really bad and you can't rely on this to be able to communicate. And the last reason is as a real resilience and as a real redundancy step. You know, if the internet's gone, if the internet's not available for some reason, there's some outage or the app's outage. You know, every time you send a message with an app like WhatsApp, your message is going to San Francisco or something and then back somewhere else. Then you know, this can be a much more reliable method. Now, I'm going to go back to the three reasons I prefer this over this, right? The FRS GMRS versus this Retevis 900 megahertz. The first reason is that this is really sturdy radio. I'm kind of impressed. You know, it's got really good thick plastic casing. It's got really tactile kind of buttons. It's kind of nice. It's just simple to use. The interface is really good. So just the design of this thing I really like. It's really straightforward. It's really hard to mess up using it. Anybody can use it. You just, you know, press the button to talk, and that's pretty much it. So the design I really like. The second is that this is on something called the 900 megahertz ISM band. And that means that you can use this. So 900 megahertz is the frequency. And the higher the frequency, the easier it is for the signals to penetrate through things like metal or brick which is why Wi-Fi is on 2.4 or 5 gigahertz, because that's a high frequency that can get through all the walls in your house and so on. The FRS GMRS radios are on UHF, which is about 400 megahertz, and this makes a difference. And so this is really good at kind of penetrating. This would be great on a cruise ship because you can get through multiple floors of a building, for instance. Now the range is still, a mile or something in terms of maybe a few miles in open territory. You never, with a radio to radio kind of communication, you're never going to get really long range unless it's shortwave or something. But this is going to kind of penetrate better. It's also digital, so this allows digital signals rather than analog signals, which is what GMRS is. And a big advantage of that is you can do encryption. So this, if you have the programming software for this, you can actually program in encryption keys. They're 512-bit encryption keys, and all your voice communication is going to be digitally encrypted, which means nobody else can hear it. With FRS, GMRS, everybody else who has one of these radios can hear it, and there's plenty of people just scanning FRS, GMRS to see who's out there. This is going to be completely private unless somebody has the same encryption key. They're not going to be able to listen to what you're saying. And so it's really robust. It's on this 900 megahertz band, and it's got encryption built in. So these are the things I really like about this. Let's just turn this thing on.
Power on. Zone 1, 1.
So you heard this is zone 1, 1. You can have, there are 8 zones with 16 channels in each, so plenty of space, 128 channels available that can be programmed. It comes pre-programmed with a bunch of channels you can use, so you can use this right out of the box. It is, being on the 900 megahertz ISM band, it is unlicensed if you're using digital. It's a little, the laws are a little bit vague on the ISM, and there's some debate as to whether this is technically legal on that band or not, although it probably is because it seems to fit the criteria. If you're using it on analog or with a different antenna or something, you could do that if you're a ham radio user. You have this secondary use for ham radio on that, but you should be able to use this confidently out of the box without worrying about licensing or programming or anything. I would recommend programming it. To program it, all you need is one of these Baofeng programming cables. So one end it's got a USB, at the other end it's got this common connector, common to all the Baofengs and everything. You just plug that into the side of the radio there, plug this into the computer, and down you'll need a Windows computer, and you can download the software for free from the computer. You can program all the different frequencies in the channels. It's between 902 and 928 megahertz, and you can program the encryption keys. And if you're a ham radio person, you can also program ham radio repeaters into it. And that one thing I want to note, there are some other radios called Motorola DTRs and DLRs, and they use something called frequency hopping spread spectrum, or FHSS. This is not FHSS. That means it kind of jumps around frequencies. This just uses individual frequencies, but I've not had any problem with interference, so I think that's okay. For the cable, I'd recommend getting this one that has the built-in PL2303 chip. This is kind of a legacy kind of serial adapter chip, and if you don't have it, you can sometimes have some compatibility problems. But this is like $8-9 on Amazon. It's not expensive. So that's the programming. The radio also comes with a charger, like the usual kind of drop-in charger, and you can plug it in. It is USB, so if you have a USB another wall adapter for USB, you can use that. This one's turned on. I'm just going to show how easy it is. Pull in another one here.
Power on. Zone 1.
Okay, so I'm going to talk into this one. This is a test. This is a test. And back again. This is a test. This is a test. And these things just work really nicely. I recommend them. They're slightly more expensive than maybe a GMRS, but not too much more. I got these for $125 for a pair with a coupon on Amazon. I'll put a link in beneath the video. So I do think if you're looking for something for just short range communication, you want some privacy, and you want a robust radio, and you want something that's really straightforward and easy to use, I'd totally recommend these Retevis radios.